This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Welcome. Ever wondered why Germany, so decisively defeated in World War II, was allowed to rearm? This exploration explains this complex historical puzzle in easy-to-understand language. We'll uncover the Treaty of Versailles' unintended consequences, Germany's secret rearmament during the interwar period, and how Cold War fears ultimately resurrected the German army. Join us as we unravel this fascinating story of broken treaties, political maneuvering, and the enduring impact of global conflict, transforming a defeated enemy into a key ally. Chapter 1. The Broken Shackles of Versailles, Germany's Secret Rearming. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to ensure peace after the devastation of World War I, inadvertently laid the groundwork for another global conflict. While its harsh terms aimed to dismantle Germany's military might, they also fueled resentment and a burning desire for resurgence within the German populace. This chapter delves into the clandestine rearmament efforts undertaken by Germany in the interwar period, a shadow game played in defiance of the treaty's restrictions, ultimately shaping the geopolitical landscape that led to World War II and, surprisingly, influenced the Allied decision to rearm West Germany during the Cold War. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed severe limitations on Germany's armed forces. The once mighty German army was reduced to a symbolic force of 100,000 men, stripped of its offensive capabilities. Tanks, airplanes, and submarines were forbidden, and conscription, the lifeblood of any major military power, was outlawed. The Rhineland, a strategically vital region bordering France, was demilitarized, creating a buffer zone intended to protect France from future German aggression. However, even as the treaty was being signed, the spirit of rearmament flickered beneath the surface. Many Germans, including military leaders and politicians, viewed the treaty as a national humiliation, an unjust punishment that needed to be overturned. This sentiment, combined with a deep-seated belief in German military prowess, created a fertile ground for clandestine rearmament efforts. These covert operations took many forms, exploiting loopholes and ambiguities in the treaty. One of the most effective methods was training military personnel abroad. Future submarine crews were sent to neutral countries, ostensibly for civilian maritime training, but in reality, they received instruction on the latest submarine technology and tactics. Similarly, pilots honed their skills in civilian flying clubs, secretly preparing for a future German Air Force. Within Germany itself, military research and development continued in secret. Companies like Krupp, renowned for their wartime production, shifted their focus to civilian goods, but simultaneously maintained their expertise in weapons design and manufacturing. New technologies, such as rocketry and armored vehicle development, were explored under the guise of scientific research or industrial innovation. The development of paramilitary organizations played a crucial role in circumventing the treaty's restrictions. These organizations, ostensibly created for purposes like sports or civil defense, provided a framework for military training and organization. The Stahlhelm, a veterans association, and the Freikorps, volunteer militias, became breeding grounds for future soldiers, instilling military discipline and fostering a sense of national unity. These early, covert actions were not without their supporters within the German government. While officially adhering to the treaty's terms, certain officials quietly encouraged and facilitated these clandestine efforts. They provided funding, resources, and political cover, ensuring that the embers of rearmament continued to glow. Public perception of these secret rearmament efforts was complex. While some Germans expressed concerns about the potential consequences of violating the treaty, many others viewed it as a necessary step to restore Germany's national pride and security. The economic hardships of the interwar period, coupled with the perceived weakness of the Weimar Republic, further fueled the desire for a strong military. This created a climate of tacit acceptance, where violations of the treaty were often overlooked or even celebrated. The clandestine rearmament efforts of the 1920s and early 1930s laid the foundation for Germany's rapid military expansion under Hitler. When he came to power in 1933, He inherited a military apparatus that, while officially small and limited, possessed a hidden strength and potential for rapid growth. Hitler's public rearmament announcements, while shocking to the world, were not entirely unexpected. The groundwork had already been laid, the seeds of a future Wehrmacht sown in secret. These early violations of the Treaty of Versailles had a profound impact on the Allies' perceptions of Germany. They fostered distrust and suspicion, contributing to the appeasement policies of the 1930s. The Allies, hesitant to confront a resurgent Germany, often turned a blind eye to its rearmament efforts, hoping to avoid another devastating war. This appeasement, while intended to maintain peace, ultimately emboldened Hitler, paving the way for further aggression and the outbreak of World War II. Ironically, these clandestine rearmament efforts also influenced the Allies' later decision to permit, and even encourage, West German rearmament during the Cold War. The fear of Soviet expansionism, coupled with the lessons learned from the appeasement of Nazi Germany, convinced the Allies that a strong West German military was essential to the defense of Western Europe. The seeds of rearmament sown in secret during the interwar period had, in a twisted turn of history, blossomed into a vital component of the Cold War's geopolitical landscape. The broken shackles of Versailles, while initially a source of instability and conflict, ultimately forged a new path for Germany, one that led from defeated enemy to indispensable ally. Chapter 2. Adenauer's Gamble, Forging a Nation Through Rearmament. The ashes of World War II still smoldered across Europe, and Germany, once a mighty power, lay fractured and occupied. Amidst this devastation, Konrad Adenauer, a seasoned politician with an unwavering belief in Germany's potential, emerged as the first Chancellor of West Germany. He envisioned a future where his nation, though scarred by war, would rise again, not through conquest, but through partnership and strength. Central to this vision was a daring gamble, the rearmament of West Germany. Adenauer understood that a strong military, integrated within the Western Alliance, was not merely a matter of defense, but a path to regaining sovereignty, securing international respect, and ultimately, forging a new, democratic German identity. Adenauer's advocacy for rearmament began long before it became politically palatable. As early as 1947 and 1948, he recognized the growing Soviet threat and the vulnerability of West Germany, situated on the front lines of a potential East-West conflict. He believed that a West German military was essential not only for national defense but also for demonstrating a commitment to the Western Alliance. Just days before his election as Chancellor in 1949, Adenauer took a bold step. He presented a memorandum to John McCloy, the U.S. High Commissioner for Germany, outlining the necessity of a West German military. This document, a testament to Adenauer's foresight and determination, argued that West Germany could not rely solely on Allied protection and needed its own forces to deter potential aggression. Adenauer emphasized the strategic importance of integrating West Germany into Western defense plans, arguing that a strong German military, within a Western framework, would be a bulwark against Soviet expansionism. Domestically, Adenauer faced a formidable challenge. The memory of German militarism under the Nazis was still raw, and many Germans were deeply apprehensive about any return to armed forces. Adenauer skillfully addressed these concerns, emphasizing the defensive nature of the proposed military and its integration into the democratic structures of the new Federal Republic. He also pointed to the growing threat from the East German People's Police, a paramilitary force that was rapidly expanding and becoming increasingly menacing. This tangible threat helped to sway public opinion, framing rearmament not as a return to aggression, but as a necessary measure for self-preservation. Internationally, Adenauer's proposal met with significant resistance. France, in particular, harbored deep suspicions about German rearmament. Twice in the 20th century, France had been invaded by Germany, and the wounds of those conflicts were far from healed. French politicians and the public alike feared a resurgence of German militarism, arguing that a rearmed Germany, no matter how well-intentioned, would inevitably destabilize Europe. Similar reservations, though less pronounced, existed in Great Britain and other European nations. They argued that a rearmed Germany would antagonize the Soviet Union, increasing the risk of war. Adenauer countered these arguments with diplomatic finesse, patiently explaining his vision for a democratic German military, firmly embedded within the NATO alliance. He argued that a strong West Germany, integrated into the West, was the best guarantee against a return to German aggression. To lay the groundwork for the future Bundeswehr, Adenauer established the Blank Office, AMT Blank, in 1950, a quasi-defense ministry tasked with planning for West German rearmament. He skillfully used West German contributions to Western defense as leverage, arguing that a nation contributing to collective security deserved greater sovereignty. The communist North Korean invasion of the South, backed by the Soviet Union and China, confirmed Western fears about communist expansionism. The war underscored the inadequacy of existing Western defenses and made the prospect of West German rearmament considerably more palatable to the Allies. Adenauer seized this opportunity, arguing that the Korean War demonstrated the urgent need for a strong West German military to bolster NATO's defenses. The war effectively silenced many of the earlier objections to German rearmament, transforming the narrative from a risky proposition to a strategic necessity. Adenauer played a pivotal role in the subsequent negotiations surrounding West German rearmament and integration into NATO. In the lead-up to the Paris Conference in 1951, he actively engaged in discussions with Allied leaders, pushing for a substantial German military contribution. A key proposal, known as the Wagner Paper, outlined a plan for a significant West German naval force. This proposal, however, met with strong resistance from France, which still harbored deep reservations about German naval rearmament. Adenauer, with characteristic persistence, navigated these complex negotiations, seeking compromises that would satisfy both German security needs and Allied concerns. The Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, SHAPE, recognizing the strategic importance of West German naval contributions, ultimately supported the idea of a West German Navy, albeit a smaller one than initially envisioned. Adenauer's adept maneuvering during these negotiations demonstrated his ability to leverage the offer of rearmament to regain sovereignty for West Germany, skillfully navigating the delicate relationship with the occupying powers. The formation of the Bundeswehr in 1955 marked the culmination of Adenauer's efforts. The new German military was initially armed and trained with support from the United States, including the return of former Kriegsmarine ships. The decision to reintroduce conscription, however, sparked considerable debate both within Germany and abroad. Critics like Erich Rieger, editor of the Berlin daily Tagesspiegel, argued that the return of conscription would inevitably lead to a resurgence of German militarism. Adenauer addressed these concerns head-on, emphasizing that the Bundeswehr would be a fundamentally different military from the Wehrmacht. It would be firmly anchored in democratic values, with civilian control and a clear commitment to NATO's defensive mission. The Himmerod Abbey Memorandum, drafted by former Wehrmacht officers in 1950, outlined several key demands for the rehabilitation of the German soldier, including the release of war criminals and an end to the defamation of the Wehrmacht. Adenauer, while recognizing the need to address the concerns of former soldiers, carefully balanced these demands against the imperative to create a new military untainted by the past. He accepted some of the memorandum's proposals, such as measures to improve the welfare of veterans, but rejected others that would have legitimized the Wehrmacht's legacy. Adenauer's gamble on rearmament ultimately paid off. He successfully transformed the narrative of German militarism, forging a new identity for the Bundeswehr as a defender of democracy and a key partner in the collective security of the West. The Bundeswehr became a symbol of West Germany's integration into the Western Alliance, paving the way for its economic and political resurgence. Adenauer's vision, born amidst the ruins of war, had created a new Germany, a nation that had found its strength not in conquest, but in partnership and commitment to a peaceful future. Chapter 3. The Shadow of the Cold War. How Fear Resurrected the German Army. The eruption of the Korean War in June 1950, a seemingly distant conflict, sent shockwaves across Europe, fundamentally altering the debate on German rearmament. Western European nations saw unsettling parallels between the divided Korean peninsula and their own continent, particularly the precarious situation of Germany, cleaved into East and West. The specter of a similar communist offensive in Europe, a North Korean-style attack on West Germany by East German forces, including the increasingly menacing People's Police, became a palpable fear. This fear was amplified by a stark imbalance of power. over 180 communist divisions poised against a mere 14 Western divisions stationed in Europe. The Korean War exposed the fragility of Western Europe's defenses. The Medium-Term Defense Plan, MTDP, adopted by NATO just months before the Korean conflict, suddenly appeared dangerously optimistic, predicated on the assumption that a Soviet invasion was unlikely before 1954, the perceived danger year. The war shattered this illusion of security, revealing the urgent need for a stronger, more immediate defense posture. In the immediate post-war period, the focus had been on demilitarization, dismantling the remnants of the Wehrmacht and preventing any resurgence of German military power. With the escalating Cold War, this approach was rapidly abandoned. Within the U.S. government and military, a vigorous debate unfolded. Figures like Senator Elmer Thomas initially advocated for arming German troops under American control, without allowing Germany to manufacture its own weapons. Others argued for a more comprehensive rearmament program, integrating West Germany fully into the Western defense framework. The Marshall Plan, launched in 1948 to rebuild Europe's shattered economies, further facilitated this shift by promoting industrial growth in West Germany, laying the foundation for its future military potential. The cost of food imports to a demilitarized Germany and the fear that widespread poverty would push Germans toward communism also contributed to the changing American stance. The occupation, the devastation, the loss of life, these memories fueled a deep-seated fear and distrust of German military power. The prospect of a rearmed Germany, even within a Western alliance, evoked strong opposition within French society and the political landscape. Public opinion polls consistently revealed widespread apprehension about German rearmament. Politicians, mindful of these sentiments, were wary of any move that could be perceived as enabling a resurgence of German militarism. France, acutely aware of her vulnerability, sought to maintain control over the pace and extent of German rearmament. The Pleven Plan, proposed by French Prime Minister René Pleven in 1950, offered a compromise. It envisioned the creation of a European Defense Community, EDC, a multinational force integrating West German troops under a supranational command structure. This proposal aimed to harness German military potential while simultaneously containing it within a European framework, preventing the emergence of an independent German army. Great Britain, facing its own set of challenges, approached the issue of German rearmament with a mixture of pragmatism and apprehension. The British economy, weakened by the war, was struggling to recover. The costs associated with maintaining a large military presence in Germany were a significant burden. Furthermore, the British government was divided on how to best address the German question. Some, mindful of the lessons of appeasement, argued that a strong West German military was essential to deter Soviet aggression. Others, wary of German resurgence, favored a more cautious approach, emphasizing the need to control and limit German rearmament. The Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935, which allowed Germany to rebuild its navy despite the restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles, loomed large in British memory, a reminder of the potential dangers of unchecked German rearmament. American pressure to rearm West Germany, however, became increasingly difficult to resist. The growing Soviet threat, exemplified by the Berlin blockade and the Korean War, also shifted British calculations. The strategic importance of Germany, both its territory and its potential military contribution, became increasingly apparent. The final decision to rearm West Germany was driven by the overriding fear of Soviet expansionism. The Korean War, a stark demonstration of communist willingness to use force, tipped the scales. The perceived Soviet threat ultimately outweighed the historical anxieties surrounding German militarism. Strategic arguments in favor of rearmament gained traction. The stationing of elite units on both sides of the inner German border, such as those poised at the Fulda Gap, underscored the tense military standoff. The need for German troops and territory for the forward defense of Western Europe became a central argument. The danger year of 1954, when a Soviet invasion was deemed most likely, added urgency to the debate. Discussions focused on the size and composition of the future West German military. Initially, plans called for up to 500,000 men, a substantial force designed to make a significant contribution to NATO's defense. The integration of German forces into NATO's command structure was another key consideration, ensuring that the new Bundeswehr would be firmly embedded within the Western Alliance. The Allies, despite their initial reluctance and deep-seated anxieties, felt compelled to resurrect the German army, not as a concession, but as a necessary measure to counter the looming threat of Soviet aggression. The shadow of the Cold War had reshaped the geopolitical landscape, transforming a defeated enemy into an indispensable ally in the struggle against communism. Chapter 4. A reluctant embrace, the Allies and the rebirth of German military might. The ashes of the Second World War were still settling across a scarred Europe when the nascent tremors of the Cold War began to reshape the continent's political and military landscape. Germany, once the epicenter of destructive ambition, lay divided and occupied, its military might shattered. Yet, within a decade, the very nations that had so recently fought to vanquish German militarism would find themselves contemplating its resurrection. The decision to rearm West Germany was not a sudden epiphany, but a slow, often contentious evolution driven by the escalating Cold War and shaped by a complex web of political calculations, historical anxieties, and strategic imperatives. The initial suggestion of German rearmament met with resistance, particularly from France, where the memories of occupation and the devastation of two world wars within a generation remained vivid and raw. The French perspective was understandably colored by their experience. Twice in the 20th century, they had endured the brunt of German aggression. The idea of a rearmed Germany, even within the confines of a Western alliance, stirred deep-seated anxieties. Public opinion, as reflected in polls and political discourse, mirrored this apprehension. For many in France, German rearmament was not just a strategic gamble, it was an emotional betrayal. Great Britain, while less directly impacted by German occupation, also harbored reservations. The British economy, still reeling from the war's economic strain, could ill afford another major military commitment. Furthermore, the specter of the 1935 Anglo-German Naval Agreement, a pre-war concession that had allowed Germany to rebuild its navy in violation of the Treaty of Versailles, haunted British policymakers. This historical precedent served as a cautionary tale, underscoring the potential dangers of unchecked German rearmament. The British approach was thus characterized by a degree of pragmatism tinged with apprehension. Some within the government, recalling the bitter lessons of appeasement, argued that a strong West German military, integrated within the Western Alliance, was a necessary bulwark against Soviet expansionism. Others, however, favored a more cautious approach, emphasizing the need to carefully control and limit any resurgence of German military power. The strategic importance of Germany's territory, its industrial potential, and its potential military contribution became increasingly evident. Within the American government and military establishment, a vigorous debate ensued, with figures like Senator Elmer Thomas initially advocating for arming German troops under strict American control, while others pushed for a more comprehensive rearmament program fully integrating West Germany into the Western defense framework. The stationing of elite military units on both sides of the inner German border, such as those poised at the Fulda Gap, heightened tensions and underscored the precarious military balance. The stark reality of over 180 communist divisions arrayed against a mere 14 Western divisions in Europe exposed the inadequacy of existing defenses. The Korean War provided a powerful argument for German rearmament, transforming it from a risky proposition to a strategic necessity. To address French concerns about an independent German army, Prime Minister René Pleven unveiled his ambitious plan in 1950. The European Defence Community, EDC, as envisioned by Pleven, would be a multinational force integrating West German troops with those of other European nations, including France, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The integration would occur at the regimental level, with German soldiers serving alongside their European counterparts under a unified command structure. This framework, Pleven argued, would effectively control German military power while simultaneously leveraging it against the Soviet threat. The EDC also envisioned a supranational political structure, including a European Minister of Defense, an Assembly, and a Council of Ministers, further diluting German influence and solidifying the concept of a unified European defense force. The EDC, however, faced numerous obstacles. Great Britain, wary of deeper European integration and prioritizing its relationship with the United States, declined to participate. Internal French politics also played a significant role. Despite Plevin's efforts, anxieties about German dominance within the EDC, fueled by Gaullist and communist opposition, continued to simmer. Ultimately, in August 1954, the French National Assembly rejected the EDC treaty, plunging the Western Alliance into crisis. In the wake of the EDC's collapse, a new solution was urgently needed. British Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden stepped into the breach, embarking on a whirlwind diplomatic tour of European capitals. Eden, a skilled negotiator and a staunch advocate of a strong Western alliance, recognized the gravity of the situation. He understood that a way had to be found to bring West Germany into the Western fold without reigniting French fears. Through tireless shuttle diplomacy and countless hours of painstaking negotiations, Eden brokered a compromise that paved the way for West German entry into NATO in May 1955. This agreement included several crucial safeguards designed to address French concerns. France, along with other Western European Union (WEU) members, was granted veto power over West German rearmament and arms procurement. This provision gave France a significant degree of control over the size and nature of the future Bundeswehr. Furthermore, Britain, despite its earlier reluctance, committed to maintaining a substantial military presence on the continent, a crucial reassurance to the French. The American commitment to maintain troops in Europe also played a vital role in allaying French anxieties. From the West German perspective, Chancellor Adenauer had been a consistent advocate for rearmament, seeing it not merely as a matter of defense but as a crucial step towards regaining sovereignty and international recognition. He skillfully leveraged West German contributions to Western defense as a bargaining chip, arguing that a nation contributing to collective security deserved greater autonomy. The formation of the Bundesgrenzschutz in 1951, a paramilitary border guard, was a first step towards rebuilding a German military force. Adenauer's determination to use offers of rearmament to regain sovereignty proved to be a shrewd political maneuver, ultimately aligning West Germany's interests with those of the Western Alliance. The rearmament of West Germany, initially met with apprehension and fraught with historical baggage, was ultimately deemed a necessary measure to counter the perceived Soviet threat. The Allies, driven by the imperative of Cold War strategy and the lessons learned from the appeasement of Nazi Germany, reluctantly embraced the rebirth of German military might. The Bundeswehr, initially limited to 500,000 men and equipped with American aid through the Military Assistance Program, would become a symbol of West Germany's integration into the West, marking a new chapter in European security and setting the stage for Germany's remarkable post-war transformation. Chapter 5. From Wehrmacht to Bundeswehr, the transformation of German military identity. The rebirth of a German military after World War II was far more than just reassembling tanks and training soldiers. It was a profound undertaking, a conscious and deliberate effort to forge a new military identity, one fundamentally distinct from the Wehrmacht of the Nazi era. The transformation from Wehrmacht to Bundeswehr involved not just structural and organizational changes, but a complete overhaul of the military's ethos, its relationship with the state, and its place within German society. This metamorphosis was a complex and at times contentious process, fraught with historical baggage and the anxieties of both Germany's neighbors and its own citizens. The shadow of the Wehrmacht loomed large. Its legacy of militarism, its complicity in Nazi atrocities, and its culture of unquestioning obedience had left deep scars. The Allies, initially focused on demilitarization, were acutely aware of the need to prevent any resurgence of such a force. However, the escalating Cold War and the perceived Soviet threat forced a reassessment. West Germany, situated on the front lines of a potential East-West conflict, was increasingly seen as a vital bulwark against communist expansionism. Rearmament, once anathema, became a strategic necessity. The creation of the Bundeswehr was thus not simply about rebuilding military capacity, but about constructing a new military culture, one rooted in democratic values and firmly under civilian control. This new ethos found its expression in the concept of innere Führung, or inner leadership. Championed by figures like Count Wolf von Baudissin, a former Wehrmacht officer who had been deeply troubled by the military's role under the Nazis, innere Führung aimed to cultivate a sense of civic responsibility and critical thinking among soldiers. It emphasized the importance of individual conscience and the rule of law, encouraging soldiers to question unethical orders and act in accordance with democratic principles. Unlike the Wehrmacht's emphasis on blind obedience, Innere Führung sought to create citizen soldiers, individuals who understood their role in a democratic society and were prepared to defend its values. This was implemented through specific training programs that incorporated instruction on constitutional law, human rights, and the ethical responsibilities of a soldier. These programs were designed not only to educate soldiers about democratic principles, but also to encourage critical thinking and independent judgment. The structure of the Bundeswehr also reflected its democratic orientation. The Basic Law, West Germany's constitution, enshrined the principle of conscientious objection, allowing individuals to refuse military service on moral grounds. It also explicitly prohibited aggressive war, limiting the Bundeswehr's role to national defense. This legal framework translated into practical limitations on the Bundeswehr's actions, requiring parliamentary approval for any deployment outside of NATO territory. This provision, a direct response to the Wehrmacht's unchecked aggression, ensured that the military would be subservient to civilian authority. A dedicated Ministry of Defense, headed by a civilian minister, was established to oversee the armed forces. The Bundestag, West Germany's parliament, was given significant oversight powers, including control over the military budget and the authority to approve deployments. These mechanisms were designed to prevent the military from becoming too powerful and to ensure its accountability to the democratically elected government. The integration of the Bundeswehr into NATO further solidified its commitment to democratic values and collective security. This integration, however, was not without its challenges. Some within the Bundeswehr, particularly former Wehrmacht officers, initially resisted being placed under foreign command. Within NATO itself, there were lingering anxieties about incorporating a German military into the alliance. However, the perceived Soviet threat ultimately outweighed these concerns. The Bundeswehr's integration into NATO's command structure meant that German forces would operate within a multinational framework, subject to the alliance's rules and regulations. This arrangement provided a crucial layer of oversight and reassured Germany's neighbors that the new military would not become a threat. The early years of the Bundeswehr were marked by a conscious effort to break with the past. Stories emerged that showcased the shift in mindset. For example, there were instances where Bundeswehr soldiers refused to obey orders that they deemed unconstitutional, demonstrating the impact of Innere Führung. The German public's reaction to the new military was initially cautious, reflecting the lingering anxieties about militarism. However, the Bundeswehr's demonstrable commitment to democratic principles and its integration into NATO gradually helped to allay these fears. Public figures like Richard von Weizsäcker, later president of West Germany, actively promoted the idea of a new, democratic German military, emphasizing its role in defending peace and freedom. The education and training of Bundeswehr soldiers differed dramatically from that of their Wehrmacht predecessors. While the Wehrmacht emphasized blind obedience and unquestioning loyalty to the Führer, the Bundeswehr's training focused on democratic values, critical thinking, and the ethical responsibilities of a soldier. The goal was to create a new generation of soldiers who understood their role in a democratic society and were committed to upholding its values. This educational process was not always easy. Some recruits, influenced by family members who had served in the Wehrmacht, brought with them traditional military attitudes. However, the Bundeswehr's leadership, with the support of civilian educators and experts, worked diligently to instill a new mindset, one that emphasized civic duty and respect for human rights. The transformation of German military identity had profound implications for West Germany's reintegration into the international community. The creation of a demonstrably democratic military, firmly embedded within the Western Alliance, helped to allay the fears of Germany's neighbors. The Bundeswehr's participation in NATO exercises and its commitment to collective security gradually rebuilt trust and paved the way for West Germany's re-emergence as a respected member of the international community. The Bundeswehr's actions during the Cold War, such as its contribution to the defense of West Berlin and its participation in NATO peacekeeping operations, further enhanced its reputation as a reliable and responsible partner. This transformation, from pariah state to valued ally, was a testament to the successful reinvention of German military identity and a crucial factor in West Germany's post-war rehabilitation. The Bundeswehr became a symbol of West Germany's commitment to the Western Alliance and its embrace of democratic values, a remarkable transformation that ultimately helped to reshape international perceptions of Germany. Germany's rearmament after World War II, a seemingly paradoxical outcome given its role in the war, was a gradual process driven by Cold War anxieties and strategic necessities. The Allies, initially wary, ultimately embraced a rearmed West Germany as a bulwark against Soviet expansionism. This decision, however, required a fundamental transformation of German military identity. The Bundeswehr, unlike its Wehrmacht predecessor, was built on democratic principles, civilian control, and integration into NATO. This transformation highlights how geopolitical realities can reshape national identities and alliances. What are your thoughts on this complex historical shift? Share your insights in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.